For more on the situation in Libya, we're joined in the studio by our current affairs commentator, Professor Tao Wenzhao from Tsinghua University. Thank you very much for being with us, Professor Tao.
Good morning.
Do you think it's possible that Gaddafi will trade his departure for a ceasefire?
I don't think that's going to happen. From the very start, I think the focal point of the whole issue is whether Gaddafi would step down. The West and opposition have made that very clear. They insist that Gaddafi must leave the power, must depart from power, while Gaddafi cannot, of course, very categorically rejected that. And even a couple of days before, the spokesman of Gaddafi's government made it clear that they were ready for any reform, constitutional reform, government composition reform, but Gaddafi must remain in power, must lead that reform. So I don't think Gaddafi would trade his departure for ceasefire.
Libyan rebels have been accusing NATO of being too slow to order airstrikes, but we also heard from NATO's Deputy Commander of Operations in Libya that the UN mandate under which NATO operates is to protect the civilians only. So where is this operation heading?
Well, actually, I think after the United States withdrew from the direct airstrikes and only gave a supporting role to the NATO airstrikes, I think the whole mission probably has been changed. Because when the U.S. was in the airstrikes, most of the activities, military activity, was done by the U.S. While the other country only played a secondary role. Now, the Obama administration withdrew from the direct airstrikes, and the NATO can hardly actually shoulder the responsibility of the whole airstrike. And Gaddafi also changed his tactics, as it is reported. The Gaddafi's army, Gaddafi's troops disguise themselves as civilians, and Gaddafi also hides his heavy weaponry, his tanks and artillery in the residential area. So NATO even can hardly find the targets for airstrikes. So after April 4th, the airstrikes, the military actions of the NATO certainly has been weakened. So that's why the opposition has become discontented with NATO. And without air support of NATO, the opposition certainly cannot compare with Gaddafi's military forces. And Gaddafi's forces, although it's partly be destroyed by the NATO, are still 10 times stronger than opposition. So I think the situation in Libya has become more and more complicated, and neither side can have a decided victory over the other. So finally, probably there have to be negotiations, peace talks between the two sides. But when, still remains to be seen.
Thank you very much, Professor. Indeed, that was Professor Tao Wenzhao, our current affairs commentator from Tsinghua University.